My name is Matt Zedeker, Superintendent of Yorkville School District 115. I know it seems kind of odd that I'm using a microphone in such a small space, but we're recording this. We put this on our YouTube channel so that we can put it on our website so anybody who's not here can listen in on the conversation and the questions asked. So as we get into our back and forth conversation, David is our mic passer and handler. We will be passing a mic back and forth just so that our camera can grab your question and that other people can hear that conversation. So just wanted to kind of start with that kind of fair warning for everybody tonight. So I do really appreciate everybody coming out tonight. As part of this process, we've scheduled listening sessions at every school to have conversations. And yes, we're at Bristol grade, and a lot of our conversation may be around Bristol grade tonight, but it's also about the district in general. And so as we engage with questions and conversation, the lens of Bristol grade is an appropriate lens to look through for questions, for information, for responses, but also the district lens. Because as we talk about a facility master plan for our district, it's going to incorporate all buildings. It's going to incorporate all students. And so both ways to look at the questions and responses are exactly what we're looking for tonight. Before we get started tonight, just some introductions. I introduced myself. Over at this table, we have Craig Wesley, who is our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, and Heather DeVerde. She is our Executive Director of Facilities. Our contact information is up there. We know that as people leave meetings, as they leave engagements, they kind of go, oh, I wish I would have asked that question, or I had some information I wanted. Contact information is here. Please reach out to us with any information, questions that you might have. We also have some QR codes over on the table. Those QR codes take you directly to the facilities portion of our website. So we have a dedicated web portion of our website that includes all of our listening sessions, all of our important dates, some of our FAQ things that we'll be putting up. So that's kind of our one-stop shop for anything facilities. And so we encourage you to visit that page for any questions that you might have. And then again, certainly connect with us. Tonight, we also have our partners from Studio GC. We have Pat, Brian, and Brody. Studio GC are architects. They have been our partners in terms of looking at our facilities, collecting data, and helping us through this process as we think about what it looks like for our facilities and what improvements that we need to make to ensure that we're tackling the challenges that we'll talk about tonight. And so we are taking all of the notes from tonight. And as we take these notes, we combine them with our other listening sessions to create the themes that we're hearing. And so as it guides our work, as we think about design and options for our Board of Education, it's important to get your voices into those rooms. So really appreciative of their partnership with us. So tonight, we're going to start a little bit with just some foundational data. We want to make sure that everybody in the room is kind of starting from the same place when we talk about data and we talk about our district. And so for the next few slides, I'll talk about community demographics and the change. We'll talk about our student growth and the demographics of our students. And then we're going to talk about, we are at Bristol grade, so we'll present some very specific Bristol grade data. After the data portion of our slides, we're going to then, Pat will facilitate some slides that have questions on those. And those questions, the first several slides, they actually aren't necessarily just about the physical structure of our buildings. Some of our questions, we want to know about experiences that you have had as parents or guardians, or what your students may have gone through. Because as we think about our facilities, we want to make sure that our facilities are aligned to our teaching and our learning. They're aligned to the experiences that our families have. And so some of the questions aren't necessarily geared again to that physical part, but don't worry, there is a specific slide that you get to unleash all your ideas and thoughts about facilities and the physical structure. So we will certainly get there tonight. So as we think about our community demographics and taking a look at Yorkville, so you can see that the median age of an individual in Yorkville is about 35. And as we look at kind of the population by age range, a couple of big points I want to kind of point out to everybody is if you look at 0 to 9 and then 10 to 19, so our students who are current students or are going to be students represent 32% of the population in Yorkville. right? So that's a nice chunk of everybody in Yorkville is either currently in our schools or is going to be in our schools. And then as we look at the ages, if we actually zero in from the U.S. Census data, the last data that we took, when they took and looked at ages 65 and above, so they identify 65 as retirement age, currently it sits at about 7%. About 20 years ago, that was over 14%. So we can see that the ages are starting to shift in Yorkville. We're starting to become a little bit younger community, as represented by that 32%. So then that takes us to our student enrollment for our district. So we backtrack all the way to 2002. We had just over 2,400 students at District 115. As we progress through time, starting with 2010, working all the way up, and what we did is we take a 6-day enrollment. And so these are our 6-day enrollment numbers. This year we were at over 7,100 students. So you can see the increase that has happened year over year over year, and we're not expecting that to slow down in the next several years. So that certainly presents some challenges for existing structures, existing buildings, and how we go about educating our kids. So when we analyze our students a little bit further and we take a look at demographics, the Hispanic population, students who identify as Hispanic, is our largest growing population in Yorkville. It sits just over 24% at the end of the last school year. 7 years ago, that was 17%. So we're looking at a growth of about 1% a year with students who identify as Hispanic. As we look at the other demographics of our students, whether it be white, black, 2 or more, or Asian, those have stayed relatively flat during that same time. And so with an increasing population of Hispanic students also brings some unique challenges that we have to consider as we think about facilities and programming. So then we'll get into Bristol grade specifically. Again, we're talking about, over on the left-hand side, we're talking about, again, that 6-day enrollment for Bristol grade. Obviously, you can see the difference here between 230, 268. We saw a large increase in that early childhood, right? We added some early childhood classrooms to this building this year that were not here last year. But you can see a little bit of the difference as we look at kindergarten through third from the 23-24 school year to the 24-25. As we also look at this slide, at the very bottom right here, we'll see 3 different colors. Back in 2022, the district had a demographer, Dr. Casarda, do kind of an enrollment study as he looked at the district and individual buildings. And he came up with 3 scenarios, the blue being the slowest growth scenario for this building, red being most likely, and then the green being the fastest growth that he would anticipate for Bristol grade. At the time of the study, the enrollment for Bristol grade was 182 students. So that put, nice little fox head here, underneath the projected growth for Bristol grade. This is very unique. Almost every other building, it's sitting at red or green in terms of being at or has exceeded what the expectation for student enrollment at the buildings are. And just to ensure that we are getting the most up-to-date data, the board has approved and we are working with a new demographer because as crazy as it sounds, 2022 is already a little outdated when we start looking at where current students live and where projected students might be in the next 5 to 10 years. And so we will be working as a district with our architects, with the new demographer, to ensure we're taking a look at expected birth rates, new developments, where our students live, where they might live, so that as we take a look at all of the numbers to do the problem solving, we have the most accurate data as possible. And then to kind of finish this slide, the upper right here, you can again see the enrollment when that report was finalized. And then you see 2 different numbers in terms of functional capacity of the building. You see a 500 and you see a 425. The 500 assumes that the classrooms in this building have class sizes of 30 students. And then the 425 is class sizes of 25. So we know that these numbers aren't exact science because there are programs in this building that don't allow you to go all the way up to 25 or to 30 when you think about kindergarten, when you think about early childhood. So these numbers aren't exact, but as Dr. Casarda did his report and as the architects looked at the actual ability for capacity, those are what those numbers represent for Bristol grade. So that data does present some challenges for us as a district. You were able to see through the Yorkville data, but then certainly our student data, we have some overcrowding. We have continued growth and overcrowding at nearly all of our buildings. We're at or near at capacity at all of our buildings across the district. So that is a challenge, a problem that we have to solve through this facility master plan. We also understand that we have students who have interests in co-curricular, extracurricular activities, and we lack green space. We lack available space for our students to be engaged in the hobbies and the passions and things that they want to engage in. And that becomes a challenge for us. As we look across the district, the age of our buildings and where they're in need of some enhancements is a challenge. We're in one of the very oldest buildings in the district. This building has unique challenges compared to, say, a building that was built in 2009, where 2009, it might be time for a new roof. It might be time for new HVAC or new windows, where Bristol grade may need, different kind of upgrades. And so the ages of our buildings and where they stand in some of those life cycle things are a challenge. And then certainly we want to take a look at security upgrades. Every year we analyze where we're at for security purposes for all of our buildings. But as we engage in this full facility master plan, we want to ensure that we're taking in and looking at any upgrades for security that may need to be implemented with all of our buildings. And so these are the large challenges that we need to ensure that we're considering when we think about our facilities and a facility master plan. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pat. And here's again the questions where, again, it may not necessarily be about just physical structures, but this is where we really want the engagement from you and have your voices in the room as Pat facilitates the second half of this discussion.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening. So Studio GC was engaged to help facilitate the master plan. And our role initially was to analyze all the existing structures. So I want to have a couple of highlights for you. So after combing through all the buildings, looking in the boiler rooms, above ceilings, on the roofs, the district has done a fantastic job of maintaining what it has. And that's not characteristic of many districts in the state of Illinois. However, the difficulty, as Matt pointed out, with respect to the growth trends and enrollment since 2002, the last building was built in 2009 in the district. It's 2025, and that number kept going up. So now we have some space constraints. So when we looked at the analysis of the facilities with respect to how many students the district has versus how many spaces we have to accommodate them and the programs that are having, there are some buildings that have some real challenges. But I think it's important because as we look to how those things are solved or what those potential solutions are, we don't have to worry so much about having kind of a sidecar of additional things to do with respect to infrastructure and roofs and all the other things that have to happen. Don't get me wrong, there are a few of those. But by and large, it's not multi-million dollars worth of infrastructure on top of multi-million dollars worth of improvements that may need to be made for space. But tonight, our goal really is to hear from you. We're certainly happy to answer any specific questions you may have with respect to this building or others. And we've given you some kind of prompts or starting point questions, but I think it's important not just to look at the physical building, because it's rare that as a team we have the opportunity to talk to people, parents and community members that are in the district, to share their thoughts about how is the district doing. Not just how is the building look or how is the building operated or those kind of things. We don't want to get into personnel matters, but we certainly want to make sure that we hear from you in terms of how is, Bristol Grade School doing as a school, as a community. How are the teachers? How are your kids experiencing it? Are there any social, challenges, or there's some successes you want to share? So I really want to open up the floor to you and I can make things really uncomfortable. I can stand next to you, and I can be really quiet with a mic. But I'm gonna stand back here and give you your space. But David does have a mic, so just raise your hand. We're happy to hand the mic off to you and want to hear a little bit from you. Everybody's shy at first. All right, so I'll nudge you a little bit. So oftentimes what we hear is that there's communication streams for how the district conveys the great things that it's doing or things they want you to be involved in. And, you know, we have Facebook and social media and backpack notes, etc. How are we doing with respect to getting the information to you in a timely manner for you to be able to use? Are there better ways for the district to communicate with you instead of seeking out the information, getting the information? We have the superintendent's update, which is an email. We have the website. There's a lot of sources, but do you have any thoughts on how we might be able to communicate better? Just one.
Emails work. They work for me. I know they don't work for everybody, but they are successful. We get them from Bristol grade school as well, and we get the superintendent's ones as well. I mean, from experience, Facebook is much less reliable, but it's helpful. But I think the emails are the best, the newsletter style that's not too drowned with information, but just getting what needs to be out there, for sure. I didn't raise my hand before, but one thing that this school is specifically successful at, I think, in academic and social stuff is the Be Bristol thing that they do. I don't know them, and my son would yell at me right now if he was sitting right next to me. But they have a Be Bristol thing where there's respect and things like that that they are almost weekly, obviously, talking about, and they get recognition for. I think that goes a long way with the kids, especially at this age with a kindergarten through third grade school. That would be one academic and / social thing that this school specifically is very successful at.
Great, thanks for sharing. Anyone else?
Thanks. In terms of communication, I would say the apps are too much. Like I don't have time to check 8 apps for all of the information that I'm supposed to look at. Sorry, Miss Heather. I don't always look at it. Just being honest. Also, in terms of successes, I think the expansion of the preschool program is a success. It should happen more, but I think that is an absolute need within the community. And while I only have 2 of my little ones here, I have kids elsewhere, and I would say that Bristol Grade School is by far the best culture of all the schools that I have interacted with. My kids always love being here. It's a welcoming space, and so I think that's definitely something that you guys are doing well.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll move on from this slide then. So, as a means of trying to understand how not only this master plan process, but how can the district at large grow from this engagement with the community, what are the things that we can do better, right? Whether it's, physical issues, pick up and drop off. I mean, it's kind of soup to nuts. What are the things that you, in your opinion, need some improvement and attention?
I would say, in terms of, I could probably come up with a bunch of different things, but I think considering the growing...
We have time, so you can go
excellent.
ahead.
That's what it feels like. So, considering the growing demographics, I think expansion of the dual language program is really important to meet the needs of that growing demographic, as well as to provide that opportunity for more students to become multilingual. Expansion of the preschool program is really important. Thinking about enhancements in student learning and coming back to that spaces and facilities. I think any major work that's done needs to accommodate for next century learning, the personalized learning models, and being able to have flexible workspaces, outdoor learning opportunities. Those are all things that we need to foster. I am in several districts that have things like they've added STEM trailers where kids get to go a couple of times a week and they get to look at, or they get to work on 3D printers and coding and doing some of these skills that are really the future of the jobs that they're going to do. And I think that we need to account for that within the curriculum instruction component as well as in any facilities changes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nothing. You got nothing for me.
I would expand on that with this school specifically, but older buildings have the issue of there is no space and there is no personal one-on-one space to be able to have those kind of interactions that might be needed for some students. And I mean, even with the enrollment being still technically under what this building can do, it's full. I mean, there's nowhere else to go. There's no multi-space, there's a lot of use of space for multiple things as opposed to having dedicated spaces, like you said, like a STEM trailer or something, or even just a room or a space. Here it would have to be a trailer because there's nowhere to do it in here. It would have to be outside. So that's the long-term considerations to take in. It's been since 2009, you said, since they built a new building. If you build a new building now, it needs to be a building that's ready for the next 20 years, not for 10 years. I came from Central School District, Burlington Central, just up the road, and they are in a battle right now with trying to get a high school going because they promised a bunch of people that, we're about to do all this work and it's going to last us 15 years, and they are 5 years in going, we need a new high school, and it's not good. So it's the future planning, the looking forward that really needs to happen for personally me or any taxpayer to want to sign off on anything, because it's got to be proven and the studies have to be there, and the data's got to show that what we're about to do and spend money on is going to last and isn't just a quick 5-year solution and we're going to outgrow it real fast like that. So that's the biggest things I see as not necessarily what can we do better, but just what needs to be part of the planning moving forward.
Thank you. And one thing I'm going to point out is, when you look at that demographic information, the 6-day enrollment and kind of that, there was no 1 year that went down, right? Now, if we took that same information in 5 or 6 districts that even adjoin you, you would see that those numbers are flat or declining in the later years. So Yorkville has the secret sauce. People want to move here. They like this community. And so I think that's a great problem to have, but I appreciate your comment, and I can assure you that that's the reason the second demographer is on board. We really want to look at this. I don't know that, you could take a crystal ball and really solve for 20 years, but I think you could realistically solve for 10. And I think that's our target, is to make sure that what goes in front of the Board of Education is a plan that does take those projections to heart and not overbuild, right? You heard the stories about Lincoln Way years ago. They had built a complete high school that was empty, right? Because their enrollment projections were so aggressive that they ended up spending taxpayer dollars on something that sat vacant. And we certainly don't want to be in that situation. So I think the district and the Board of Education in particular, with Matt's leadership, has taken a very prudent approach to controlling what we're doing to ensure that all of the data or all of the information that we're putting forward as ideas is grounded with data. So thank you for highlighting that. Anyone else? Come on, we can do better. Excellent.
I really didn't want to talk because I hate public speaking, even though I'm a teacher. So
We can turn it back.
I am coming from the area of early childhood. I've been in this district. This is my 4th year in this district. I've moved every single year. As a teacher, my classroom has moved every year to a different school. And this one is by far the best one that we've been in my opinion, because of just the people, but also I think the leadership is awesome too. But the problem, or I guess not the problem, but part of having moved so many times is I have seen different schools, the way different places are run. I've been at the Early Childhood Center, which like I'm really, really glad that you guys want to look forward because that we outgrew that in half a year. So awesome. But I would love to see integrating early childhood into all the elementary buildings. I didn't go to the early childhood listening tour because I'm in the minority of my colleagues, but I've been in a lot
You have a
of them.
divergent
Yeah.
opinion. That's okay.
A lot of them haven't been in elementary buildings and in an early childhood building, whereas I have. And granted, I haven't been in the larger elementary schools, so I don't know, what that would be like for sure, because I've been at Yorkville grade and I've been here, and they're both like the littler elementary schools. But there's something to be said of having the older children in the same school as our littlest learners. They get to kind of learn from each other. They get to see how they get to be role models for each other. All the time we're in the hall, and something that motivates the older children is the teachers are like, oh, look at the preschoolers. Like, look how they're walking in a line. Do you guys think you could be good examples for them? And then they straighten up and they walk in a nice line, right? And they get to collaborate with us, and they get to teach our kids stuff, and our kids get to learn from them and teach them things too. So I do think there's something to be said of integrating a population, if not all classrooms, amongst the elementary schools. And a lot of people don't want to touch early childhood because they don't know what to do with us. So like, oh my goodness, these people are so tiny and they're loud and there's a lot going on there. But it's true. It's true. They know it. But there is something to be said for the older kids learning from our kids as well as ours definitely learning from the older kids and vice versa. And then we can collaborate better too, because our kids are going to be in all of these schools. So why not get them into their school that they're going to and get them learning about what it's like to walk that building and be a part of it and grow up in that school, as opposed to you're in one building for maybe a year, maybe 2 years, and then you're in this next building for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your perspective. Thank you for sharing that.
I just wanted to piggyback off of that. I totally agree. I think that there's a lot of value in even looking at like more groupings like this school of like a pre-K 2 or 3 setting, just to be able to provide that for those little ones, as well as the same thing is valuable for the middle level kids as well, for them to have that intermediate cohort and that middle level cohort. And thinking about that question of are there ways to improve for teacher and staff, I think I just always want to advocate for more time for teachers to do the planning and to do the work. And the 4 to 5 institute days a year is never enough. So with any kind of plans and considering how we can use facilities and curriculum to provide additional learning opportunities for kids, I think that needs to come with more planning time for teachers and using that staff that would need to go towards hiring for a STEM program or whatever to provide additional time for teachers to do any kind of planning. And then additionally, with thinking about the community, I haven't experienced this at BGS, but I know that they do welcome parents into the building, but there are definitely other buildings in the district that don't, that it is a locked door, parents don't come in. So I think that having a policy where parents are able to come in and volunteer and provide some expertise, even things like career days, whatever, just helps to build that additional community support.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. Anybody on that side of the room have anything to add? Well, this is valuable information. We certainly appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, look at that.
When was the early childhood talk or meeting that you all had? Do you know? No, I don't mention that.
It was.
We do the early childhood program. So that's why I was like,
It was in December.
oh, okay. And we moved here in the summer, so.
It was a lively conversation. And I think, the thing about early childhood, it's the youngest, not just because of the age of the students, but it's the youngest insertion into public education, right? Like early childhood has been not part of public education as long as everything else. And I don't think any district has the perfect solution for it. But I do think the great news is that I think the administration and the board are really looking at what's the best outcome for the kids, right? You know, we can design spaces to put them, what we call butts and seats, but, you know, where those things are located and how they, you know, has to be looked at in the context of the district. But I appreciate your perspective, I really do. And, you know, I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer. Anyone else on this slide? So let's talk about facilities. So we don't have enough space, although on paper it looks like we have room. We have no space. So we heard that. But are there any other things? I mean, obviously this building is one of the oldest buildings in the district by a little way of history. So in education, these buildings were built, hence the reason why we have tables that are plastered to a wall. These buildings were built as neighborhood schools. Kids went home for lunch, right? They walked home for lunch. And then they came back in the afternoon. And as the evolution of education kind of wanted to keep the kids in the building, we started feeding them lunch, then they started getting hot lunch and all those things. That alone created some stress for space in the buildings, as well as infrastructure. But what we'd like to hear from you today is how are these buildings, or in this case, let's just limit it to Bristol. If you have experience with another building, fine. How is it performing for your student? How is it performing for your family or for this community?
I mean, for us as early childhood, the only major thing that we have is the water here is probably something that you could hear about from everybody and anyone. Is it's really not something that the kids, you know, I mean, it's fine for them to drink. I'm sure it's super healthy for them, but like our sink water is like metallic and stuff. So, you know,
Sure.
probably needs some updating, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's like for, you know.
Old pipes, yeah?
Yeah.
No, that's a
And,
real thing.
You know, I know that this space right here is gym / cafeteria. So I know that puts a strain probably on custodians to clean it and everything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. It's not just old pipes in the building. My backyard shares the backyard with the grade school. It's the water. We have a lot of iron in our water, a lot. So it would take a very significant RO system. It would take an RO system to really filter this water to make it much better. It's not like you can't drink it, but yeah, it's not the most delightful thing to drink either,
Yeah.
even at my own house. So that's where that comes from. Personally, because I share that backyard with the playground, I would like to see that chiller replaced. I also am biased because
Just turn around.
yeah, I'm also biased because I work for Train and I've replaced chillers in this district at other schools that are newer, but that thing is loud. I'm sure Hillary can hear it across the street when it's screaming in the summer. That thing, there's some old stuff, but that's a district-wide issue with just
Yeah.
you can only replace so much at a time in budget constraints, and like you said, you have buildings that have been around forever, and the exponential growth just doesn't let you keep up. But those are things that definitely are gonna be emergency problems down the line if they don't get taken care of now. So that would be my biggest thing. But
Can I ask what grade your kids are in here?
I have a first grader
Okay.
who started kindergarten last year here in 2 years, and then got another one that's going to be coming through
Right,
eventually.
thank you. What about from their perspective? Kids come home and say, you know, I went to the bathroom today. Not just about the water. Is there anything else?
The new playground's a hit.
New playgrounds,
The new
excellent.
playground was a hit. That was a big deal when that went in. The old one wasn't bad per se, but this one's way better.
Yeah.
And it's better because the whatever you want to call it, the surface that's down now allows them to play on it right after rain. It drains better, stuff like that. So that alone is something that just from the back window you can see the fact that they can come out much faster and not just be stuck on the asphalt or stuck inside. And when they come home, I can tell when recess has been outside and when it hasn't been outside. So that's a big plus.
Thank you.
We did that to quiet the chiller. Just like
Anyone else? Yeah.
go in front of you just so you don't record it. I hate microphones. I think overall, with the age of the building and what is being utilized here, granted the population percentage is still lower than what it should be. I mean, overall, the utilization of the space, the library, this space as well. We have two boys. We have a first grader and a third grader. Kindergarten. Overprojected a little bit there. My bad. I was close.
He's looking ahead. It's 2025. He's looking to the fall.
Just the library alone, for a school this size, the library is phenomenal. Our boys both love it. Just even the utilization of where the music is and, ILT and everything like that. I think for what is here and, the cards you're dealt, I mean, it's utilizing the best of the abilities. And again, yes, the playground is a humongous hit. Minus. And they do complain about the water. Playground is a hit, yet had bonks in 2 days, which doesn't surprise me with my kids. But yeah, like the library, the gym utilization, it is what it is, and make the best of it. And I think Victor does a great job with his team on that as well too. So, I mean, for what it is, pretty happy with what we've got. I know you can't really go up, you can't really go out, but obviously changes are necessary, especially in the older buildings.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything we're missing, like things that are noticeable to you that, like this school, you'd like the school to have, but it doesn't?
So I come in I was heavily active in sports through school, and it's looking like that for the one. You're not practicing here. I think any kind of new facility, grade school or any level, should have a gym space that can be utilized for practices for any level, because part of that crowding issue is going to be, like the middle school gym is massive, right? And even that is busy all the time and full, and you're running out of space. And so having the ability to utilize some of your elementary schools for gym space, for practice space, for junior high kids, for high schools, for freshmen versus sophomore, varsity, that kind of thing, to not have to have high school practices going from right after school till 9 p.m. or whatever, right, is to give that facilities, and then possibly, again, for the community, being able to rent the facilities out to the community for parties, for events, and things like that. That's something I know happened at my schools when I was growing up, where you could rent the gym space. And so is it a big source of revenue? No, but it's a big community plus for the community to be able to have a space that they can come to that, they helped build with their tax money, and then can also rent at a reasonable fee and use it and have it there and available. So I think when it comes to anything future being built or changed or added on or things like that, it's the multi-use of not just for this school. Like he said, this school is a prime example of utilizing every inch of space you can find effectively, but nobody else can come in here from the district and use it for much of anything. And again, it's an old building, so we have the constraints, but anything new that gets built needs to have that thought in mind as well, as how else can it be utilized besides just for its intended grade school or intended middle school purpose.
Yeah, great perspective. Thank you.
I don't have children in the district yet. My oldest will be in kindergarten. I walked here. I'm right down the street. So I am speaking from a place of nostalgia. And that 2002 number you had, that was my senior year. So that is very stark for me to see that, even though I felt it living here my whole life. But one of the things that I worked in the district for about 4 years too, and for a bit at the high school. And I struggle with, this is nostalgia again, that our flagship building, the high school, can't host our big events, like the Prism concert. I don't want to go to the middle school for that. First of all, it's a hike, even from this side of town. And two, like your flagship is your high school. So I think it would be nice if we could return to that. I know that's a big endeavor, right? But that's how I feel.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks. I love that perspective.
If somebody did say something about that,
Anything else you can think of?
So just a couple of things that have kind of been in the back of my mind. I completely agree with like incorporating EC into all of the buildings so that they have like older, models to look at and learn how to be students. I'm not a huge fan of the kindergarten or EC through sixth grade model. I teach at a junior high in a neighboring district, and like my sixth graders, I'm like, I don't want them on the same bus as my kindergartner. Like, just like the things they're interested in and the things they talk about, there's just such a vast difference developmentally between, especially an EC child or a kindergarten, first grade, second grade, through like, I think of an end of the year sixth grader. That's just such a vast difference.
Sure.
So, and I don't know if there's other districts around who still do a K-6 model primarily. The district I work in, we don't. So just throwing that out there. And the other thing I wanted to add is that we love BGS, and I have a third grader and I don't want him to ever leave this school. I would love for him to stay here forever. Big schools don't make great schools necessarily. So the school that I teach in, we moved from a smaller building into a larger building, I think about 16 years ago. And in that transition, completely lost like the family feeling, the small town school feeling. So just also wanted to throw that out there to keep that in mind, that big schools don't mean good schools. So yeah, I think that was it. We love BGS. Mr. Perez is the best.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anyone else on this topic? And I'll let Matt close it out. Thank you very much.
So I'll just, kind of wrap the night up and just talk about process. So as I indicated earlier on, we've scheduled all these listening sessions out. We have a few more to go. I think we wrap up at the end of February. At parallel work structures, we have a steering committee that we've formed that has teacher representation, principal representation. Mr. Perez is on the steering committee, but we also have community representation with board representation as well as our partners. And what we're doing now is we're taking this information, we're taking the data, and we are trying to create options to problem solve for the district. We know that, certainly through a facility master planning process, as we go through these sessions, there are lots of ideas and lots of things that we want to try to make sure that we implement through this planning process. And the steering committee is really kind of our guide to say, okay, here are all the things. Now, what can we really make sure that we achieve, and what's going to give us our biggest bang for our buck for our kids and our community as we move forward? And so that work is going on currently as we continue these listening sessions. And there will be a time in the spring where we'll have basically an open steering committee meeting where the community can come, take a look at some of the options that the steering committee has developed to give us input, to ask questions. We want to make sure that this process is transparent in terms of what we're thinking and how we're going about the process of saying, we looked at trying to do this, we couldn't do it. This was the other option instead. And so I always want to make sure that everybody understands that we're going to be doing this out in the open. And we want to make sure that we get that feedback. And so this is a small piece to that, but that will continue on. And then this summer is when we will be bringing options forward to the board for, kind of an official vote to say what is our plan moving forward in terms of our facilities in our community. So with that, I do want to thank you for your participation tonight, your attendance. We really appreciate it. And again, if there are other things that pop up for you, please reach out. Please email, please call. We want to make sure that we grab, your questions and respond to you as we go out through this process and anything else. So thank you and have a great night.